And I use the analogy of a dog. The dog has a tail, and either the tail is wearing the dog or the dog is wearing the tail. And what I mean by that is you get quite a few inexperienced developers or investors who bring in a whizzy design team to create something, but it's then not fit for purpose. People coming to look at a property, either they're visual, they're auditory, they're motivated by smell, taste, or touch. We're all different animals from the jungle. And you have to find different ways to touch the different points.
Absolutely. Hello and welcome to the Developers Club podcast. I'm your host, Ben Wilson. Today I'm joined by Alan Waxman, the founder and CEO of Landmass. Alan, welcome.
Thank you very much and lovely to be here.
Thank you for coming. So let's go back to the beginning. How did Landmass start?
It started actually by default because I had a couple of friends who wanted to go into business with me. One specifically because he wanted access to my father's money. And that's why I had an initial look at property, because at the time I was working for a skiwear company, completely different.
Skiwear?
Yeah, I was looking after the international distribution of two brands, one called Nevica, one called Killy, and international subsidiaries. And I thought, well, never really thought about property. And looked at it, and I've made some bad decisions in my property careers, as a lot of people have from time to time. But one good decision was not to go into business with one of these individuals in particular, as we later fell out over a property deal for £350.
Wow.
And so I always think it's one thing to lose your own money, but you don't want to lose the family money. And that was my initial thinking of why I started. And I then started buying some little things to rent out. And I think it's a really good way of starting a property because it's the least risky way of getting involved.
No, that makes sense. And you've been in the market for 30 years, approaching? 30 years?
Yeah, 20,
not far
20,
off.
26 years plus, yeah.
And what do you think shifted most in London prime sector?
Well, lots of things have shifted. I mean, we were just talking about the taxes, the stamp duty taxes, which are now horrendous. Cost of borrowing is a lot greater than when I first started. Access to development sites that stack up is really difficult. And the mentality of the buyers, I think buyers are a lot more demanding now.
More informed.
A lot more informed. If you think back to the 60s and 70s when the builders were putting magnolia everywhere and everybody was happy with that, it's come a long way since then.
That's certainly true. And it's you were founded in Soho, which in 1998, is that right?
No, actually my last office was in Soho.
Okay.
I actually started working from home. I was living in Wandsworth. Then I had an office in Fulham in the old Gasworks, and then in Knightsbridge opposite the Berkeley Hotel, and then of late in Soho. But now we're office free, which is actually a really nice way to be because it gives you complete freedom and you don't have the overhead.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to say it's a lot more cost effective. When were you in Soho? What years?
What years? Well, we left last year and we were there for about 7 years.
Okay. Because it's changed so much over the last. I mean, prices now are just through the roof. So hence why I ask about it. But I mean, I remember years ago when Soho was all a lot more smutty and people didn't want to live there. Now people pay £2,500 a foot to live there.
No, it's
bonkers, isn't it?
Super smart.
Yeah, I think it's a good fun place to look part of London. So what made you sort of pivot from doing developing and investment properties into the architecture side of things, design and build, client facing?
Maybe if you allow me to take a step back. So we started buying some things to rent out, give a liquid paint, sell for a small profit. And then I bought a property in Fulham on a very busy road called Wandsworth Bridge Road above an off license. And it was two floors. And on the first floor, you may not appreciate how clever I am because I had to move the location for the kitchen 3 times. So I was clever enough to realize I didn't know what I was doing. And then clever enough to realize the importance of how you use the space. So we rejigged it, got it done correctly. I then got a feng shui specialist to come and check it. She was happy with it and sold them relative to the market quite well. I then bought a couple of flats in Notting Hill, and they were 2-bed flats when I bought them. And I did something strange for a developer. I changed them not into 3 beds, but actually into 1 bed. Sienna Miller bought one, the actress. Somebody else bought another, and again, sold them quite well. That particular block was quite interesting because the freeholder didn't want to spend any money on the common parts. The regulated tenants on the upper floors. There were cracks on the outside of the building. So we had to piece the outside of the building together, had to redo the common parts up to the first floor level at my own expense because I didn't want to spend a penny because, of course, I had something that I really wanted to sell. So from a learning curve as a developer, it was a great case study of way of learning.
Sure.
After that, everybody finds their own niche in property, right? And we started to go up market. In 2009, we did a project in Belgravia, which just had windows at the front. It was a mews house. Mews houses, for those who don't know, are used to be for the horses, for the big houses in the smart parts of London. And because of that, it was very dark and dingy. So I took out a rear corner, put a glass retractable roof, 10.5-meter waterfall going down to Zen Garden, and met up with Nicole Kim, and she was going to buy it. Then she changed her mind. She got pregnant, changed her mind, but we sold it to a French entrepreneur at a record price relative to the market. But in answer to your question, there we won Best Interior Design in the country, Best Development in London. So on the back of that, people then came to me and said, Alan, we like what you do. Can you do work for us? So I came into the business to buy some properties to rent out. I didn't come into the business to develop, right? I then didn't come into the business to do work for other people. Never even thought about it, right? And so it's only because they asked me, did we start doing that? So that's why. And then initially we outsourced everything, and then we're now a member of the Royal Institute of British Architects and do architecture and Grade 2 listed buildings and of course the design stuff as well.
Now doing podcasts talking about all of it as well.
Yeah, lots of gobbledygook.
So I think somewhere where we have very similar ideas, you're very much into volumetric design, right? So that's something I've read up on you, that you're like you say about going from a 2-bed to a 1-bed. I'm a big advocate of that, and I think the days have gone of doing a very basic 1 to 2 bed and you make $100,000 and you walk away. So tell me a little bit more about the volumetric design that you do.
I actually registered as a trademark,
Really?
Believe it or not, because I was very passionate about the importance of giving quality space and the mindset of, you make your money from the number of bedrooms to actually rather the quality of the space that you produce. And, first of all, if you're doing low ground floor, ceiling heights are super important. If you can create drama within the property and the only way you can often do that is by having voids. Obviously, by having a void, you're losing square footage, right? So it's, I guess, being brave enough to have conviction in your ideas to then take the risk of doing those sort of things. But I'm a great believer that people see through the number of bedrooms, the this, the that, low ceiling heights. You've got to give the space. If I allow me, I'll just give a little example.
Please, yeah.
So a couple of weeks ago, went to look at a project in Covent Garden. Very nice building, beautiful facade, and it had planning to do some commercial and on the ground and first, and then resi above. And I was walking around with my colleague and looking at the ceiling heights and thought, this is a bit low, right? In fact, it was very low. And thinking about, how they were going to find a solution to that. I spoke to the agent, and he said, no, don't worry. In the plans, it shows sort of 2.8, 3 meter ceiling heights. I said, I don't understand how they can do that without changing the slabs. And so we had a very good meeting with the architect. And if I can give one tip of my experience, if you're looking at a project that has planning, you really have to spend time with the architect who got the planning, because that is the only person
pulling it apart,
where you don't get any gobbledygook. They give you proper information about the good, the bad, and the ugly of the scheme. And also, in relation to architects, never point the finger at the architect, because often if they got planning for something which you think is poor, it can be because of the instructions they've been given. And actually another project in Covent Garden I looked at a few years ago, it was with an architectural practice that we actually used on some of our private client work. And I said, I'm sorry to say this, but the scheme you've done on that particular project is terrible. And he said, I know. He said that was the instruction.
They can't all be brilliant, can they?
No, but it wasn't. They were following instructions of the owner.
Right.
That's where I'm coming from.
And probably lack of money, didn't want to spend as much. Or
I don't know, but you know, he agreed with me. He wasn't happy with the scheme, but that's what they wanted to do. And on this one, a little bit the same. The owner, I'd say the expression "cutting their nose to spite their face." They wanted to cut costs on the architectural fees that you just mentioned, and they didn't rejig the levels.
Yeah.
And the levels that they then achieved were really 2.2 to 2.3 meter ceiling heights, which is totally inadequate, and nobody's going to want to buy them, or certainly not for a decent price. And really, you know, what the architect said, they should have kept the front facade, rip everything out behind them, redo the levels, all the rest of it. So,
good advice. And it's interesting to talk to you about this, because whenever we develop a lower ground floor, the first thing we will look to do is dig down the floors to the lowest level we can, allowing for the corbels on either side. Generally, we don't want to underpin, just because, you know yourself, in the more expensive parts of London, you can underpin, but sometimes neighbours will really kick up a stink and delay you. So we can normally get 200-300 mil down just from lowering, putting in some sort of, you know, there are certain materials you can use now where you can have a thinner screed, thinner slab. You can really, if you spend the money, you can take things right down. And so we do that as a matter of course, like you do. But a lot of people don't even think of it. And the other thing is the amount of flats that I bought across London where in the 80s, they fire stopped them, or they just didn't want to pay the heating bill. So they lowered a 3.5 metre ceiling to 2.5 metres. And most buyers will go there and think, oh, this is really low. First thing I do is take a spotlight out and have a look. I think, right, that's like 300 grand of value on this 1.5 million pound flat just for 5 grand spent or 2 grand spent. You know, it's an easiest way to add money is if you can find ceiling voids.
No, ceiling heights are essential. And I did a project in Notting Hill, and it was a new build. And I had it Ladbroke Grove.
Okay.
And I had it mothballed for a few years, and we got the planning, and I hadn't taken my time to actually study the plans that we got, and realised that the ceiling heights were only 2.5 metre ceiling heights in the lower floors. So we then went back to planning to get 2.75 ceiling heights, which was fine. Normally I'd like more than that. Sometimes we got up to 3.2 metre ceiling heights, but that was adequate. And it's such a massive difference, because people, you know, you already have a hurdle when you're trying to sell lower ground floors, and you don't want to do it with one arm tied behind your back. So you really want to find different ways to turn the negative to positive, but they come down and go, well, I wasn't expecting this light, it looks amazing, and all the rest of it.
Invariably with lower ground floors, because there's always this old sort of adage with the developers, avoid walk-ups, avoid lower ground floors. I've always liked both of them, because I think walk-ups, you get amazing views, you get great terraces, you can get big outside space on a walk-up. People will go up and buy it, because you don't get huge outside space on the first and second floors. You might get a little balcony, but you're never going to get a huge rooftop terrace. And the lower ground floors, I think, especially if they've got gardens directly off the back. I mean, there's a big difference between a basement flat and a lower ground floor flat. To me, a basement flat has 2 retaining walls at either end, whereas a lower ground floor has a garden off of the ground level. So it's almost like a ground floor at the back, a basement at the front. But mean, the key with basements is really to get light into them, isn't it? And glazing is your friend. Obviously, it's incredibly expensive. That's the only problem. But like you say, with that, putting in a glass sort of what would you call it, light well through the building. That's how you create the drama, isn't it? And
I think a big difference is what you're talking about is whether you're doing flats or it's part of a house.
Sure.
Yeah? If it's flats, again, it depends where it is in London, right? Because if you're in a very expensive area, walk-ups are a lot more difficult. People, I'm not paying that much money to then carry my bags. It's a big hurdle. Basement flats, low ground floors, whatever you want. Funnily enough, I had an idea, you might think it's a stupid idea, a few years ago, to set up an estate agency that only did basement flats.
No, do you know what? It's funny you should say that, because I had the idea of doing basements and walk-ups together, and you call it like top and tail or something like that, or because top and bottom.
Most, I'd say, 95% of buyers will say to the agent, "We don't want a basement flat," right? But all the basement flats are full with people, right? They're not empty, right? So people, that 5% do buy basement flats, and in essence, it's a compromise purchase.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, they have a dog and need a garden, etc. But it's a compromise purchase, and they get more bang for the buck.
What's really interesting with basement flats, and something I've noticed in my career as a developer, is if you look at the range between a basement flat in Zone 2 and in prime Belgravia, Knightsbridge, Mayfair, that you might vary from £700 or £800 in a cheaper area to 1,100, 1,200. You vary, unless it's a lower ground with a full garden, you very rarely go massively over that. I know you can in certain exceptions, but on a first floor flat, the variation is huge. It might be 900 a foot to 5,000 a foot. Basement flats, they are limited to the upper value.
Somebody with, say, £2 million in a very good area, even if the basement flat's massive, they're still not going to buy it.
Yeah.
Right? They've got a price ceiling, as you're absolutely right.
I mean, I don't know, do you know Westbourne Terrace well? The big, beautiful grand houses. They've done quite a lot of development there, and client work there, and those basements are massive. They're like 2,200 square foot. But the houses are so big that you get very little light into them, and you never really see them sell for more than 1,000, 1,100 a foot. But they're amazing lateral flats. And if you were to have a double lateral first floor there, you pay £2,000 a foot. And it's double the price, but you're above ground. I haven't met many people that are into basements, because I really like basement flats. So it's good to meet someone.
BBC TV a few years ago did a television program called Millionaire Basement Wars, and we had about 2 million viewers, and I was the developer they used on it.
Wow.
Talking about basements. So.
Interesting. So you're it's a thing.
Well, it's a way of turning, especially in an area like London, where land's very expensive, property's very expensive.
Sure.
You've got to make the best of what you got.
Absolutely. And you mentioned you've done waterfalls, Zen gardens, double height ceilings. Is there any other tips or clever design ploys you've done that you advise to we've got a lot of younger listeners that are trying to get into development.
So you have to be, I think the first thing is, it's not what you do, it's who you're doing it for. Because at the end of the day, all we're doing is creating a widget to flog, right? Doesn't matter what it is. Somebody designed this glass, and the people who work at this club decide to buy it. This is a widget to flog. Sure. They like the style, the price, the whole shebang. No different to our property. Especially at the higher end, if an agent takes a potential buyer into property and they don't like it, they don't turn around to the agent and say, "Do you think they'll take a discount?" They say, "What else do you have?" Right? Mm. So it's become very binary. So the type of design that you're talking about, or the importance of it, has never been more important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So for me, the first step is understanding your target market, right? And actually bring in somebody who I think is going to help me sell the property right at the beginning. Who are we going to sell this to? What are they looking for? That will then help on the configuration and a little bit on the style. And from there, because there's no point me designing something which then I think is fantastic, my design team thinks fantastic, and then somebody walks in, doesn't want to buy it. And I use the analogy of a dog. The dog has a tail, and either the tail is wearing the dog or the dog is wearing the tail. Oh. And what I mean by that is you get quite a few inexperienced developers or investors who bring in a whizzy design team to create something, but it's then not fit for purpose.
Because they've targeted the wrong demographic.
They've targeted the wrong demographic.
It's interesting you say that, because I agree with that approach totally, and I don't agree with everything you say, but I think our philosophies are quite similar, which is nice. I do think though that something I've learned to do as well is you also have to, especially in certain parts of London, you may think it's a family that's going to buy it, but you also have to design it to be cool enough and contemporary enough that a young professional couple might buy it. So you've got your kind of target demographic that you think it's 70% likely, but you might have 15% and 15%, where you've got to cater for it a little bit, and try. I know you can't be all things to all people, but you do need to bear that in mind, I think.
I totally agree with that. We did a first floor lateral flat in a place called Berks and Gardens near Earl's Court.
Very well. Yeah, nice road.
Very nice square. And it was north facing.
Yeah.
So we ummed on do we put in walnut, oak, what type of floor we're going to do. And we decided to put a light oak because of the light, because it's north facing.
Sure.
The buyer comes in, stains it all dark, right? It doesn't really matter what you do. The main thing is to do what you think is right and what you think people are going to like. And the attention to detail is super, super important. If I can give you a couple of examples.
Go for it.
So in fact, my last 3 projects, the number of the property, we've had that signage made bespoke. And then we've used that signage on bath mats, towels, bathrobes, crockery, the floor mat as you come in, etc., etc. So to give a bit of sort of light branding, right? Sure. Then another thing which I did on my last one, where you might think I'm a bit stupid, well, you probably already think I am.
No,
but I found a company, and you might think this is completely nuts, to put the logo that we had designed on the loo roll. Okay. And what you have to remember is people coming to look at a property, either they're visual, they're auditory, they're motivated by smell, taste, or touch. We're all different animals from the jungle. And you have to find different ways to touch the different points.
Absolutely.
And, whether it's the smell, whether it's the sound, the visual, the TV, etc., etc. So it's really important to find different ways. Another thing that I did on the last property, there was a little patio between the pavement and the entrance to the property. So you had a little gate. I spent quite a lot of money on having compressors behind the gate, so that when you pushed it, it had that really nice feeling. It wasn't just hinges. So I didn't need to have that expense.
It reinforces security as well, doesn't it? In the mind.
Yeah, because it closes all, and had very nice handles, right? And it had that colour matched to the colour of the gate, right? So these are things which you think you don't need to spend,
sure.
Which you don't need to spend, but it's things which I believe help.
100%.
Another thing, you're obviously familiar with Ladbroke Grove, because Notting Hill. You've got nice parts and scrappy parts. I got my builder to power wash the pavements outside, clean the street signs, clean the bus shelter, get all the graffiti off. First impressions, you only get one chance to make a first impression. And all those little things really help.
Absolutely. And years ago, I used to work at Foxtons as an agent many, many years ago, when it was a really proper, it's still a great company now, but it was much more aggressive back then, but it was a great place to learn the trade. And my sales director used to say, sell the sizzle, not the steak, and what he meant by that is, it's not just the main sort of big ticket items that you see, it's also the little nuances and things that are really important to set the scene to a buyer. And I think what you're talking about, doing these small little details everywhere, they add add up together. And if you think about it, a buyer only looks, they might come in for 5-10 minutes on the first viewing and 20 minutes on the second viewing. So they spend 25 minutes of their life deciding to deploy £2 million of their money to buy this asset. And they really just go round on a little circuit, look in that room. So I always try and design so that every single room has some sort of wow factor. Even if it's the WC and it's 2 square meters, it's got to have an amazing mirror or an amazing tap or something. Just because when people see things that they don't like, they look for other poor quality things. And then that's
I totally agree. And, you know, for instance, I've had a time when my accountant has said, you know, how come you're spending so much money with the florist? You know, who are all these flowers going to? And, you know, my thinking was the sort of person looking to buy this property is somebody who might stay at the Dorchester. They've got big floral arrangements. They want that type of feeling of, oh, I can relate to this. Another thing that I've done is on one property, I actually employed somebody specifically to look after the property during the sales period. So they had, they were dressed as a chap, black trousers, black shirt. They had a Landmass logoed shirt, so that when anybody came for a viewing, you know, the lights were already working, the fires were on, the music was on, the candles were lit. It was presented properly. So you don't get an agent, because if you're reliant upon an agent to sell it, right, he's probably doing a tour, or she's doing a tour of, you know, different properties. You know, yours is not the only property they're showing, right? And for you, it's really important, but not for them. Sure. You know, they may say it is, but there's nobody more important than it is for yourself. And so to have somebody, again, it depends on the value of the property, whether it's worthwhile, but to set it up properly so when people come, that makes a massive difference as well.
100%. I mean, when we were young agents being trained, we were always told, get to your viewing 5. I mean, it doesn't work so well if you've got a tour of 5 properties. Sure. But get to your viewing early, 5 minutes early, turn the fire on, open all the doors on. I mean, even just having 3 sets of beautiful French doors open onto a terrace, just these sort of things, put all the mood lighting on. I mean, now if I do a property, most of our properties, I don't know, 2 to 5 million, so we will have Lutron lighting systems or Creston or whatever it might be. But now I've got an estate agency button that I just say to them, don't press anything else, just press this button. They still press other things sometimes, but they press it and every single light comes on how I preset it. Yeah. And I mean, you know, you couldn't do that probably 30 years ago, but now with the technology, sure. It definitely helps. So let's talk a little bit more about, so the business you've got has got a number of sides to it. So development, design and build, and acquisitions as well on behalf of high net worth individuals. What's sort of your main focus at the minute?
So I would separate the business actually into 3 parts: development, services, and joining the dots. So development, we're aggressively out there looking for more sites to buy. We've got 2 big single units in St John's Wood that we're speaking to various investors on, and we've got a number of other sites that we're looking at to buy, develop, and sell. So on the development side, again, never been more busy of getting out there looking for things, because I think it's a very good time to buy. Services, we have 2 main services, the architecture and interior design, and there we work with other investors, developers, as well as private clients. And I think it's really important that a developer or an investor is working with somebody who understands development. And if I give you a little example, we worked with an investor. They had £30 million of stock to sell on a project they'd done that had been done for them in Victoria. And the money they put with the developer couldn't sell these flats. And they knew our work and asked me to go and have a look. Went to have a look. And the way it had been staged and presented was for a Russian or Middle East client, which is not the profile of the buyer in Victoria. And so they said, Alan, do you think you can help? And I said, yes. And they said, well, what do you suggest? And because I think we're shit hot at what we do, because I come from Yorkshire, I said, I don't know. And they said, what do you mean you don't know? So I said, well, how can we suggest what we should do until we sat down with the selling agent and understand the profile of the buyer? They went, that's interesting. Nobody else has said that. They're just showing us the pretty stuff. We got the gig. We spent £30,000 on furnishing a 2-bed flat. The previous designers have spent £60,000 on furnishing a 2-bed flat. They were there to sell the furniture. We were there to sell the flat.
Yeah.
So it's different ways that you can assist. And then on the property sourcing, we really just focus on value-add properties because there's hundreds of property finders in London. They're all very experienced and well-connected. We can't compete with them. We just need to find a way where we can use our own experience.
Sorry to interrupt you. I do also think that you say they're all experienced and well-connected, but my experience of not all search agents, but there are a lot of search agents that do search agency, I think, because they've refurbished their own house or done a couple of refurbs, and they quite like the idea of getting into property. Maybe that's not so much the case now, but certainly 10 years ago, a lot of the search agents I met, their level of knowledge was actually not great in terms of to the level that you might have or I might have in terms of development and whatever, like you say. So there is a niche, like you say, for
there is a niche, but I guess I'm thinking more the ones that operate in the prime areas who
Penny Black and people like that.
They have a lot of very
successful,
very good, very good at what they do.
Yeah.
So that's on the services. And for instance, yesterday I had one inquiry and one meeting. One is to actually renovate a flat down in Juan Le Pas next to it's Cap d'Antibes in the south of France.
Wow, worst places to renovate.
And another one who's got a flat in St John's Wood who wants to redo.
If you take on that Cap d'Antibes project, how would procurement work with that? Would you just ship it all in from the UK? Or
no, because my head of design, she's actually Italian. She's actually going on holiday back to Genoa. She'd go down and meet the client. And then I have connections in the south of France and Monaco because we also have a design business in Monaco that we're developing. So it's not a.
So you have a good team down there that you can make things happen.
Exactly, yeah.
Go on.
But also on the design side, where we're also active is helping agents get deals across the line.
Really?
Because there's lots of properties where it's too much work for an end user, but not enough skin on the game for a developer, and they stagnate. So, for instance, we're helping an agent in Kensington. He's had a property on his books for over 2 years. Why? It's a building that was developed in 60s or 70s. It's very brutalistic, very dark brown, and each side is two separate units, and on the side that we're looking at, it's split into two, and the layout could not be worse. It's a minefield of the layout, but the pièce de résistance, you've never heard about this before, on the top floor of this house, is a swimming pool.
Wow.
In the property.
On what road is this?
I can't tell you.
Tell me a secret, no. Sorry.
It's just off Hyde Park. There's a swimming pool on the top floor in the house, not on the terrace, next to the kitchen.
Wow.
So really higgledy-piggledy. And, the buyer, potential buyer, he wanted to, he likes the building, couldn't get his head around the layouts. And so we spent quite a lot of time and effort putting proposed layouts, color-coded with 3D models as well, so they can really understand what they can do with it. So it's a very proactive way that we can help get deals across the line.
It never ceases to amaze me the amount of people, especially people with money, that don't know how to dress a house. You see a lot of very beautiful houses on the outside. Internally, they're just so badly dressed, and they, like you say, they undersell, they undervalue them because of that.
But you worked for Foxtons, right?
Years ago.
And agents have pressure to get instructions, right? And it's very rare that, in my experience, that the agent will turn around to the owner and say, do you know what, you should really put a third of it in storage because it's a mess. It needs redecorating and the carpet's cleaning, as a basic.
People get offended, don't they? That's from...
Exactly, right? Yeah. So we can go in and do the offending on behalf of the agent in order to then help them.
So you're happy to go and be offensive, are you?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes. I thought you might say that. And you also, when I was having a look at the services you offer, you also do some hotel acquisition work. Is that right? It's quite niche.
Again, this is, we're not agents, we're not brokers, right? But people come to me, Alan, we've got a client looking for XYZ hotel, can you help us? It can also be that they are looking for a certain type of hotel. It can also be that they have found the hotel they want to buy, but they don't know, the people they've been working with can't deliver it, because a lot of people say they have access to, but they don't really. So we actually have, so I have direct access at the moment to 2 trophy hotels in London. That's where I'm direct to the owners. Another one which was previously repossessed but is now back up and running. Again, direct to the owners. People have come to us, Alan, we've got a client who wants to buy this hotel, can you help us? So we find out who the owners are. So no agents, no middlemen in between.
Yeah. So better prices to buy as well then.
Better. It doesn't really help, but it's the deliverability. Because I say with hotels, there's 3 challenges: deliverability, deliverability, and deliverability. And
it's not an area I know a lot about. So
no, it's not an area that I knew. But yesterday I had somebody look. They had a buyer who wanted a certain hotel in Cannes in the south of France, another hotel in London, which is very well known, and I've done my research and gone back to them saying neither are available, because they've been bought by sort of sovereign funds a few years ago. They've improved them. They're not going to sell them.
Not unless they got stupid money for them. Yeah, it's not worth doing.
So they'll then get stupid money in 10 years' time. Do you know what I mean? They don't need to sell it. They just want to keep it.
And you're very much about the long game, creating long-term relationships. Is that right? Unlocking value over the long term. With clients.
I think whether it's sourcing product for people or doing design work for people, it's your reputation, it's your deliverability, and I'll give you a bad example or a good example where I sold a property a few years ago when I first started. We exchanged and we sold, and then we found out that the builders had done a bad job, right? We went back in and fixed everything. Yeah, we didn't have to, but we did it, right? And I guess it depends a little bit on your own moral compass, right? And I always think there's one thing getting yourself in a mess, it's how you get yourself out of a mess. And some of the professionals I've been working with, I've been working with it for 20 years, and they don't stick around if you don't treat them properly. 100%. And also on the design side, if you're doing work for clients, your best way of getting new business is through word of mouth, and that's only going to happen if they're happy with it.
Yeah, no, that all makes a lot of sense. And I think just sort of moving on from what we've just been talking about, I mean, the market has shifted significantly in the since Liz Truss and came into power, and the issues she created in the bonds market and so on. I mean, we've had nothing but I'll start that again. Since Liz Truss came into power and we had the issues in the bond market with the changes she made, I mean, we've had a pretty poor market in prime central London for 3 years, pretty much. So, and we've had increasing stamp duty changes. So how do you think that's impacting prime central London?
Well, I'd go back before Liz Truss to George Osborne, who was the catalyst of making a mess of the high-end market through the stamp duty, which I believe they cut the nose to spite the face, because it means much fewer transactions, and also, put the tax to one side, but less work for the builders, the decorators, the designers, all the other people who are part of the chain. How the market is now, well, it's like every other market. It's all about apples and oranges, supply and demand, right? And the big kicker at the moment is tax for the wealthy people. And the fact
it's massively infecting us.
And the fact that a lot of them have vacated London also means that fewer people are coming to London. That's on the negative side. On the positive side, people ask me about where do you think the market's going. So my very simplistic answer is the world's becoming a more dangerous place. The world's becoming a wealthy place. And London is and always will be the international city of the world. Why? Obviously the culture, but also the timeline. Dealing between the markets in the Far East and North America.
Schools as well are massively important.
All that sort of stuff, right? As people leave, other people come. People have different types of motivation, different reasons for doing all different types of, as somebody's going to live in Dubai because of tax benefits, somebody from Dubai is coming to live in London. But the people coming to London at the moment are fewer than they were in the past. But nevertheless, they're still coming. Secondly, some of the people who have left, some will have been renting and some will have owned property. The ones that are renting, other people have probably taken over. The ones that own property, some of them will have sold, but others will have kept them. Yeah, because often if they're, again, it depends how wealthy they are, but if they're very wealthy, they don't need to sell their property, and they know that in the future, first of all, they'll have it as a place to come and stay when they come back, as long as they're careful with their 90 days, whatever they're allowed to do. But also, it's a capital asset which is going to increase in value.
So you basically think that the buyers are becoming more discerning, and you need to be doing a better product.
It's got to be special, right? Yeah. It's got to be very special to attract their attention. Yeah. But there are buyers out there, and interestingly,
you need one.
And also because the higher end stuff has been much more difficult to fund, there's, certainly for single units, there's fewer opportunities for them to buy something which has just been finished in a nice turnkey way.
We're finding that almost every buyer will now want turnkey. Presumably some of that's affordability, and they want to spend all the money they've got just leveraging, taking a mortgage and buying something that's done. They don't want to spend $300,000-400,000 refurbishing it. We've seen that shift a lot. 10 years ago, a lot of people wanted to do work, and that seems to be changing. And I've always had the philosophy with when the market drops and gets tougher like it is now, we've always increased our spec, which is counterintuitive to most developers who will cut back because they're worried their margins are getting squeezed. I think, like you say, you've got to do the opposite. You've got to actually spend more money because only the best stock will sell. All of the average stock, all of the crap stock sells for crap money in a bad market. The really good stuff is the only good stuff that sells, and it will still sell, like you say. But it's tough at the moment. I mean, I've not known it to be this tough before, really, in 21 years.
I had exactly that conversation with somebody yesterday. They said, we've got to be, if we're looking at a project now, they said we've got to be really careful on the costs. I said, that's not the right. Obviously, you want to get bang for your buck,
of course,
but you might be better off spending $550 a foot rather than $450 a foot, right? As long as you're getting good value for what you're spending, because people have a choice. And remember, people are still going into Louis Vuitton. They're not just going into H&M.
Yeah, that's very true. So we've talked a bit about the past and a bit about what's going on currently, but what's the next stage for Landmass? And are there any projects or new services in the pipeline that you want to talk about?
Well, again, that's a great question. On the development side, as I said, we've never been busier looking for things to buy. Not easy to find things that stack up, but we're very keen to do that.
Sure.
On the joining the dots, again, I'm hoping to get 3 letter of intents on Monday for 3 significant assets, 1 big hotel asset in Mayfair, another apartment block in Mayfair, another apartment block in St. John's Wood. So there are people who want to invest, and if we can find the things that they can't get hold of, plus assets where they can add value, that's why they come to me. I always say to people, if you can't find, if you're looking for something, go to your network. If you can't find what you're looking for, then come to me. That's really my sort of
good advice.
Added value where I can help them. The second thing is we've put a lot of our knowledge together and we've created Landmass Advisory. So we can then advise family offices, wealthy people on what they're doing, and the big difference is because we've done it on our own account, we know what it's like to go through the purchase process as a principal, not just a service provider. A lot of the people giving advice, they're very good at what they do, but they come at it from a professional point of view rather than actually having been at the coalface themselves. And, I was speaking to somebody who's looking to buy a hotel that we've introduced them to, and he was talking about, first of all, they need funding, which we can help them with, because we have very good access to money. And secondly, on the strategy for making the offer. And he said, well, what do you mean? So I said, well, your buyer's foreign, the agent or the vendor is not going to know them. You're saying that they already registered and done their KYC AML with a good local lawyer. So it's the lawyer that wants to present the offer, not me, you, or them. Sure. Because the vendor will respect the lawyer. The second thing is, because this property is...
Good advice, yeah.
This property is, it's about 60 million quid. I said, you want to get your buyer to lodge 10% of that with the lawyer. So the lawyer is then able to write a letter to the potential vendor, to the vendor, saying, we're instructed by XYZ, we can exchange and complete in such and such a time. Most importantly, we are in funds for the deposit. Sure. That's a game changer. And whether you're buying a £600,000 property, a £6 million property, or a £60 million property, it doesn't matter. But from the agent's point of view, that makes a massive difference of giving them confidence. And if an agent is selling a property, say for £1 million, and you want to buy it for 900, that's £100,000 difference for the vendor. But it's only £2,000 if they're on 2% difference to the agent. They're getting £18,000 at 900 and £20,000 at £1 million. So if you're able to show, make the offer from the lawyer, we're act for XYZ, and we're in funds for the deposit, that's a game changer. Absolutely,
good, great advice. And in terms of, when you're looking at these projects that you're looking for yourself, more for yourself as a development purchase, are there any particular areas that you think are the places to buy at the moment, or are you just looking in prime central London generally?
So that's a very good question. So generally, I'm looking in prime central London, sure. Right? Because that's the market I know. I had an interesting telephone call this morning with a lender, and they will only lend on properties which have a maximum value of £2 million. Now, me saying that on a video, only lend on properties with a maximum value, a lot of people might think that sounds crazy because, most properties around here are 300,000 or 400,000.
It's very low in prime central, isn't it?
Right. But it's all relative to the market, right? Their terms for the lending are the best I've come across. They'll lend 65% of value, one in, one out, and
not purchase price.
No,
value
of sales value.
Yeah,
of the gross development value.
Oh, 65% of the GDV.
Of the GDV, fine. Right? Sorry, of the gross development value.
Yeah,
the sales value.
Yeah,
which is huge, right? That can be over 80% of your total costs, right? Without any mezzanine, without any bridge. So fees one in, one out, and 5% over base. So at the moment, base is 4%, so it's 9% interest, which is the best I've ever come across at that level. And that actually, in a way, is partly motivating me to potentially look for some sites in zones, maybe 2 to 3, where we can offer properties at that level. But it's also interesting for other people if they want access money like that to know that those sort of things are available.
If they want to find out, in a minute we'll give your email out, and you can take a fee off them, and you can tell them who it is.
As the Tesco adverts say, every little helps.
Absolutely. And just sort of finally, so let's do a bit of a quick fire round. A few questions, and you can give us a quick fire answer. So, most memorable project you've delivered?
I think it's got to be Grosvenor Crescent Mews that I did in Belgravia, which had the waterfall, it had the Zen garden. That was a game changer for me.
Amazing. And what did that sell for? Do you remember?
7.5 mil.
Wow. And that was when?
2009.
Wow. So that's a lot of money there.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing. And the worst project to have worked on, and how? And I added this question in because I thought it's good. To, we always say everything's wonderful when you're developers, but what's the worst one? The toughest?
I think the worst. The worst is that example where I said that the builders did a bodge job.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the start of it. Before those builders came in, I had another builder who I then found out had been in jail for fraud, and I was paying him to do the work. He wasn't then paying the subcontractors. So on that example, I'd gone from the frying pan into the fire.
Absolutely.
Right. But listen, you got to learn. Everybody will make mistakes. You got to learn from them, and then make sure next time it's belt and braces.
I like to look at when you have a really bad deal, because it does happen sometimes. You break even, or God forbid you lose money. I like to think that the money you've lost or you haven't made on that project, you're making millions in the future, because you will never do that again. So I try and spin it and be positive, and I think
absolutely
you have to, otherwise you jump off a bridge. Yeah. And biggest challenge you still face in the development process? What do you find hardest? Nothing.
I think the challenges are if you keep doing the same thing in the same way, then you bang your head against the wall.
Always push the boundary.
You've always got to look at the boundaries, like, for instance, looking for sites where the sales value is 2 million per project because we've got a new exciting funding line. Look at ways of perhaps joining the dots and putting a few deals together. The challenge for a developer is always money and finding the right sites. That's always, the deliverability is always a challenge, but that's a different challenge, right? Sure. But having the right equity and debt partners and access to sites that make sense. And if I could just might add on that, a good way to work out whether it makes sense is the red book valuation from the bank valuation. And I can't say I'm the best developer in the world, but I have a 100% track record in always getting red book valuation. And I've never had to take a value out for a nice lunch to fudge the numbers. And there's the adage in property, you make your money when you buy, not when you sell.
100%. Yeah, and look, red book valuations are normally lower as well than what the market value should be. Yeah. So if the bank's telling you it's worth 4 million, it should probably be worth 4.25 or 4.5. So no, absolutely, you're right. And just finally, what inspires you creativity-wise?
I think, again, this might sound arrogant, but I think if you can bring things to the table, you give people what they didn't realize they could have, right? Rather than what they want. Because if you give them all the time what they want, they don't understand what is then possible. And you look at Steve Jobs, perfect example. He gave people not what they were initially wanting, but what he thought they should have. And the way he presented that as well was a game changer. And that's, I guess, the added value that will separate different types of developers. It's what they can bring to the table. So when people go into a property, they go, "Ooh, I wasn't expecting to see this," and they really like it. And sometimes my projects have been a bit like the TARDIS in Doctor Who. What they see from the outside is very different from when they open the door. Absolutely. So if you can give them that magic, because they're paying a premium for it and they want to appreciate it.
Alan, thank you very much. How can people get in touch with you? What's the best way? Have they got a deal for you in St. John's Wood, for example?
Well, either best is probably email address, Alan, A-L-A-N, at Landmass, landmass.co.uk. They can look at our website, landmass.co.uk. They're probably the two.
Amazing.
Best
Alan,
ways.
thank you very much for joining us. It's been really informative. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks a lot.
This is the Developers Club podcast. I'm your host, Ben Wilson. Thank you for joining us.